Welcome and a big thank you to all of you for participating in this CSW67 side event on women, peace and security and cybersecurity, safeguarding online civic spaces and women's digital rights using artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies for peaceful and socially cohesive societies across Asia and the Pacific. My name is Nurul Rashid, and I'm the Regional Policy Advisor on Governance, Peace and Security for the Asia-Pacific region with UN Women Bangkok. This event is jointly organized by the Australian government, the Republic of Korea, and UN Women. Now, we have an excellent set of panelists, and we hope to have enough time for a brief Q&A session where the audience can ask questions to the panelists. You can also pose questions in the chat or the Q&A function anytime during the discussion. The panelists can also provide written answers if we do run out of time. Now, I would like to begin by inviting Ms. Kiera Spencer, First Assistant Secretary, International Security Division of the Australian Department for Foreign Affairs and Trade, or DFAT, to provide opening remarks via a pre-recorded video.
Thank you, UN Women, for hosting this event on women, peace and cybersecurity, and for inviting me to speak on behalf of Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I begin by acknowledging the First Nation custodians of the land from which I'm speaking, the Ngunnawal people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also extend my respect to First Nations people joining this event. My division of the department supports Australia's Foreign Minister across a range of international security matters, contributing to a peaceful, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific region and world. Promoting gender equality is a priority for Australia and central to Australia's diplomatic, economic development and regional security efforts. We seek to embed gender equality in the digital age by protecting women's human rights, promoting women's economic empowerment, and the leadership of women and girls in technical, policy, legislative and advocacy roles in cyber and critical technologies. Currently, women account for less than 10% of the cybersecurity workforce globally and are vastly underrepresented in political settings and other decision-making positions. As a result, their experience and needs are often overlooked, and cyber and critical technologies continue to replicate and amplify existing social and gender norms and inequalities. Although this issue goes further than just gender, women, people of diverse genders and sexualities, and people with disabilities face disproportionate levels of cyber and tech-facilitated violence and targeted cybercrime, disinformation, and radicalisation campaigns. Globally, 3 in 10 women have experienced online abuse or harassment. This is amplified for women with a public online or media profile. When the abuse occurs in a work context, which it does for 1 in 3 women surveyed in Australia, many women reported that they took a backward step professionally, avoided leadership positions, and stopped discussing topics they felt were inflammatory. As reported by the She Persisted campaign, being part of a global online community has helped women and human rights activists rally against repressive governments and raise awareness about injustices. Citizens and activists rely on social media and other digital tools to communicate and broadcast their messages to the world. However, they are targeted for these efforts. For example, the women and girls of Iran bravely use digital tools, even as Iranian authorities and their supporters misuse and abuse the same technologies against them, propagating coordinated online harassment, abuse and disinformation campaigns designed to discredit them and silence their protests. Australia will continue to look for ways to support women globally in exercising their rights freely and safely, online and offline. A critical way to achieve this is through increasing the representation of women in technical, policy and leadership roles, resulting in more responsive, effective and equitable cyber governance and e-government, increased accessibility, meaningful connectivity and safe use of technologies that underpin sustainable development and inclusive prosperity, and a focus on cyber and critical technology for all, closing the digital divide and ensuring no one is left behind. I am very pleased that the Cyber and Critical Tech Cooperation Program, a $74 million capacity building initiative led by my division, mainstreams gender equality, disability and social inclusion in everything it delivers. Guided by the programme's inaugural GEDSI strategy, which was launched on International Women's Day 2022. This strategy underpins DFAT's inclusive approach to cyber and critical technology capacity building. In partnership with many other like-mindeds, Australia established the Women in International Security and Cyberspace Fellowship. Under the fellowship, the Cyber and Critical Tech Cooperation Programme sponsors women diplomats to undertake training in cyber policy, UN processes and multilateral negotiations, and to attend open-ended working group meetings of the UN First Committee in New York, which has the lowest proportion of female diplomats of any of the UN General Assembly's main committees. The fellowship has proven successful in growing women's expertise and promoting their voices in this sphere. Women made 52% of the interventions at the July 2022 session of the Open-Ended Working Group, a significant increase from the rate of 37% in December 2021. The Cyber and Critical Tech Cooperation Programme is also proud to support UN Women's Peace and Cybersecurity Programme, and their work empowering girls, women and gender minorities to confront misinformation, disinformation and hate speech, to participate fully in public life and to benefit from the economic and social opportunities offered by cyber and critical technologies. Gender equality, disability and social inclusion is a matter of human rights and a prerequisite for sustainable peace, security and prosperity. Barriers still exist. We need to acknowledge them, understand them and then dismantle them. They are not insurmountable. We must open every door for the diversity of internet users everywhere to ensure we can address current and future global challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks to DFAT. I would like now to proceed to the next session. And I'm very excited now to invite my colleagues from my own team at UN Women Regional Office, Gael Demaldus and Alexandra Schmidt, and they will explain why cybersecurity is important to the WPS or the Women, Peace and Security agenda. Over to you, Gael and Alex.
Thank you very much, Nurul, and welcome everyone. Today, I'm pleased to share some of the work that UN Women has done on women, peace and cybersecurity in Asia and Pacific region. First of all, as Nurul said, why do we speak about women, peace and cybersecurity? In other words, why is it important to look at cybersecurity from a WPS perspective? And what do we mean by that? What we see around us is that cybersecurity is often discussed in the context of national security, defense operations, but the human security perspective is really lacking, and very little research has been conducted on the intersection between gender and cybersecurity, and even less research, I think, exists in the context of peace and conflict. And since 2021, our office has advanced this work through research, advocacy, and policy efforts, which I'm happy to present today with Alex. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, why is it important to understand cybersecurity in the context of WPS agenda? For those in the audience who are not familiar with the WPS agenda, if there is one key element to remember on WPS, it is the adoption of the milestone UN Security Resolution 1325 in the year 2000. It was the first ever UN resolution which linked gender equality and international peace and security, recognizing that women and men are impacted by conflict differently. It also stresses that women must be part of the process that aims to resolve conflict and build peace. The agenda, as you can see in the slide, stands on 4 pillars. The first one, which is the participation pillar, looks at really how it is important for women to have equal access to participate in all levels of decision-making and peace processes. The second one, which is the protection pillar, looks at the rights of women and girls that needs to be protected. The third one, which is the prevention pillar, looks at gender perspective that must be included in conflict prevention initiative. And the fourth one, which is relief and recovery, looks at the gender consideration within relief and recovery. So therefore, the WPS agenda gives us a new lens and allows us to assess cybersecurity opportunities and risks through this new lens. But what are these risks and opportunities? Next slide. First of all, we acknowledge that technological innovation can play a key positive role in building and sustaining peace. With the help of ICT, we can find new ways of preventing conflict and increasing civic engagement. For instance, in the framework of peace processes, technology has been used to increase the number of people and diversity also of people who were consulted. We've also seen that artificial intelligence is increasingly used to leverage the opportunity of peace technology. For instance, with artificial intelligence, we can identify trends across big sections of data to analyze shift in conflict analysis. So AI really helps us to have a better understanding of the issues because it is using analysis of all of the data that is available in a very quick manner. So we can rapidly react to escalation of conflict. So AI can be used positively in the context of early warning mechanism. And AI is also used, as you know, to block the spread of disinformation, hate speech, and manipulated images. And therefore, women's human rights defenders, women CSOs, journalists, election monitors, and peace builders have to have the possibility to access a more refined analysis of trends related to peace and security. They can have access to tools that can amplify their peaceful narrative, their counter-narrative, their campaigns through the use of this technology. But as we know, on the flip side, digital technology have also been used to facilitate and exacerbate conflict drivers, means of radicalization, hateful, misogynistic content. And based on our research, this is what we found out. First, interpersonal harms, such as online gender-based violence. And one particular aspect, for instance, that when we are disclosing the personal or private information, such as your address or your phone number, which is called doxing, we see that this phenomenon disproportionately is used to target women, as well as LGBTIQ people, in particular, those in public positions, such as women politicians, women journalists, women human rights defenders. And this is causing women and gender diverse persons to self-censor and face real-time security risks. It is a way to silence them and to hinder their civic engagement. For instance, we had one women's rights defender who came from a crisis country, who told UN Women that her husband had asked for intimate video of her, and then he shared it with his friends, and then it ended up on a website. But 10 years later, she's an activist, and she's still afraid that people may find this video and that might discredit her work. We've also seen that emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence can exacerbate these harms. Again, several women in politics have shared with us that deepfake and graphic videos of them were circulated on the net, and it put an end to their political life. We also know that low level of digital literacy and poor cyber hygiene practices exacerbate these harms further. And it increases the risk of being exposed to hacking, scams, ransomware, and other malicious acts that can lead to data breaches. Also, online hate speech has also been a particularly prominent conflict driver in South and Southeast Asia. And hate speech and extremist narratives are heavily gendered. We've seen, for instance, violent extremist groups that use a very specific targeted message for women that is very different for men. For women, the violent extremist group would use pictures of women combatants. They would emphasize the role that women play as mothers, as wives of combatants. They kind of sell this sense of false empowerment. On the other hand, when the violent extremist group target men, their message extol toxic masculinity. They highlight the importance of men to be able to kill their enemies, They promise combatants that they will have access to women, including through sex slave. So the narrative, the hate speech and extremist narrative are very much gendered. And research has also showed that the use of AI can exacerbate these issues. For instance, through AI, we see that in social media, it can be used to create what we call digital echo chambers, in which a person's opinion might not get challenged since they are only exposed to their preferred content. Basically, you click on something you like, and then it only gives you access to things that you like. So you will be in your own echo chamber. So it is also a way to have a very, it provides an environment for radicalization, violent extremism, and misogyny. And lastly, we see that internet shutdown and other types of access restriction are used to silence and limit the work of peace builders and human rights defenders and their ability to coordinate efforts, as well as also everyday users in these countries where there is internet shutdowns, where they can't have access to political or conflict-related developments. I will now hand over to Alexandra for the next slides. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Gail. So one of the key takeaways from this is that the gender dynamics of digital technologies and security tend to be overlooked. We see that a women's low degree of leadership in decision-making spaces relating to cybersecurity, technology development, and peace building at large is effectively hindering opportunities to ensure that women, young women, and persons with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics can safely engage with online platforms and digital technologies. So when it comes to national action plans on women, peace, and security, we see that only 5 out of 104 action plans globally include references to cybersecurity. Women make up only 32% of Southeast Asia's tech workforce, and the share of women CEOs and board members in this field is even lower at 15%. Furthermore, women make up only 22% of the world's AI developers. So the fact that women are not equally represented in cyber-related fields is causing measures to mitigate gendered online harms and security risks to lag behind. So moving forward, the Women, Peace, and Security agenda can help us overcome these challenges by ensuring that cybersecurity considerations are integrated into conflict prevention and peace efforts. UN Women have found through our work that we must focus on strengthening women's leadership and meaningful participation in cyber-related legislation and decision-making, as well as in the development of governance of traditional and emerging technologies. We must leverage conflict-sensitive and gender-responsive approaches to detect and prevent gendered impact of digital security threats, including the use of emerging technologies. We must safeguard the human rights, physical safety, and mental well-being of women and persons in all their diversity, both online and offline. And we must utilize the positive potential of technologies to enhance and expand the reach of relief and recovery efforts in conflict and post-conflict context, including supporting digital peace-building initiatives. So for more in-depth recommendations on how to actually achieve these outcomes, I would highly recommend you to read the advocacy brief that we recently published on cybersecurity in the context of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. This was jointly drafted by a network of civil society organizations last year with the UN Women's support, and it outlines 25 key recommendations across the 4 pillars of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda for decision and policymakers to consider. This has been an important document in advancing cybersecurity under the Women, Peace, and Security agenda across Southeast Asia region, and the recommendations have been brought forward during the development of the ASEAN Regional Plan of Action on Women, Peace, and Security, and it has also been used to inform other dialogues on women, peace, and security and cybersecurity policy on the national level across countries in the region. So on that quick conclusion and note, I would like to conclude this presentation by thanking all of you for your attention and for showing interest in our work. And if you would like to access more information on this project, you can visit our webpage, or please feel free to reach out to us directly. So thank you so much, and over to you, Nurul.
Thank you very much, Gail and Alex, for completely drawing the linkages with the Women, Peace, and Security agenda and setting the stage for our next session. It is my pleasure to introduce our 3 panelists. for the next session. Dr. Eleanor Fournier-Thoms is the head of Anticipatory Action and Innovation at the United Nations University Center for Policy Research in New York. Ms. Zahra Nur Alia is from Indonesia and is a volunteer for the Southeast Asia Freedom of Expression Network, or SafeNet. And finally, Ms. Shelley Hingorani. She is the head of Advocacy, Research and Communications at the Association of Women for Action and Research, or AWARE, based in Singapore. Now, what I would like to do is to invite each speaker to briefly outline their work and to also share a key message that they would like participants to consider on this subject matter. So could I invite Eleanor first, please?
Thank you very much, Nurul and colleagues. It's very nice to be here today. I will quickly share my screen for the 2 minutes. And so, as colleagues have mentioned, the research that we've conducted at UNU is in relation to the effects, positive and negative effects of AI on the women, peace and security agenda. Generally, AI is known to have important socioeconomic opportunities throughout Southeast Asia. And there's a lot of energy and excitement around the use of AI in a variety of economic sectors, from agriculture to education, to health, to labor, and so on. On the other hand, there have been highlighted numerous risks in relation to unregulated AI, such as discrimination, stereotyping, and exclusion. And this research pinpoints another area of risk that is less spoken about, which is the area of insecurity. And to what extent can AI technologies increase the insecurity of women in the region? However, the key message here for us is that the main challenge is that this new set of technologies is unregulated. And yes, unregulated AI can harm women's security, and we'll talk more about it later in the session. In the same way that any scientific or technological innovation can be very harmful if it's not properly tested. So it would be the same in the pharmaceutical sector, for example. On the other hand, if we are very careful and intentional, this technology can be part of the solution to enhance WPS in the region. And so in the coming panel, the idea is to present some of the results from this research project that has taken place throughout the region in the last few months, and discuss the insights from it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eleanor. Could I invite Zahra to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you. Alex, can you help me share my screen? Okay, so hello everyone. It is such a pleasure to be part of the panel, and I'm going to start the statement of that must women feel unsafe surfing the internet, almost all on digital platform. And as we know that during COVID-19, we must work at home because of social and physical distancing policies, technological change, and the economic, politics, and also educational life have changed too. And despite the increase of in domestic violence, many women are also experience online violence and harassment from their work colleagues, their friends, or even the closer one. And for example, like getting sexist or misogynist chat, or even getting objectifying. And I think before the pandemic, it already existed, but it is increased when COVID-19 outbreak. So according to SafeNet's annual report, OGBV in Indonesia has experienced a significant increase, reaching 620 cases, or more than 10 times as much as in 2019. And also post-pandemic did not show a decline. There was 698 cases in 2022. And it should be understood that this is all still iceberg and much has not been recorded. And we aware that threats of online violence are increasing, and it encouraging many individuals as well as women human rights defenders to advocate. And while women human rights defenders contribute to advancing human rights, they are also vulnerable to experiencing layered online violence, which also has implication for online life. And in the context of online violence, they have to be face it both in the private and public digital space. So I think it's a key message that I want to share with all of you. Thank you, and I'll give back to Nurul.
Thank you very much, Zahra. Could I invite Shelley?
Thank you, UN Women, for convening this important forum, and to my fellow panelists for their insightful and actionable insights. Before I dive in, a quick trigger warning. What I'm about to say may contain themes that some may find triggering. Please take care of yourself and ask for help if you need it. Now, in 2021, I worked with an ethical AI company to develop an online misogyny index based on the different types of hate speech women experience online. We hope this project would help us color in the details of the long shadow that sexism and misogyny cast in the online world. The first step in building this model was to agree upon the classifications it protects, then collect training data from across different social media platforms. We looked at past misogyny models and realized that all of them had been tested in either the US or European contexts. So we set out to develop a local, an Asian model. After researching training data and qualitatively studying misogynistic language on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube comments, and select forums, we decided on the following 5 classifications. First, threats and imagery of violence against women. Second, rape myths and victim blaming. Third, flipping the narrative. Now, this classification included reversing conventional understanding of gender dynamics to argue that men are the oppressed party, not women. Fourth, stereotyping. Fifth, belittling and objectification. We started by testing the model on tweets because it gave us the ability to build on previous studies that had analyzed the hostility of Twitter towards women. I want to highlight 2 key findings from this research. First, the classification analysis showed the most popular misogynistic posts and comments were belittling and objectification. Second, flipping the narrative. And third, rape myths. The second finding I want to quickly highlight is that the analysis also showed that bystanders are complicit. On Twitter, misogynistic content is twice as likely to be liked by the online population and 4.5 times more likely to be retweeted when compared to non-misogynistic comments. I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear panelists, for those initial insights. I want to turn now to the panel proper. And I would like to ask each of you a question. And you have about 5 minutes for each question. So Eleanor, I will start with you. The question is, we see that digital platforms are important conduits for peace, but also carry specific gender risks. Could you please explain how artificial intelligence and gender interrelates, and how this is relevant to both conflict dynamics and peace efforts, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region? Over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you very much for this question. So the first thing that I want to talk about is try to take a step back and understand what we mean when we talk about artificial intelligence in particular, which is the focus of this talk. We have a big focus when discussing the effects of digital technologies on the WPS, on social media and online interactions, which is correct, which makes a lot of sense in terms of the effect of these technologies and the way in which we've experienced it as women. On the other hand, the category from a technical perspective of AI is broader than that. And so the objective of this table is to first start highlighting the different technologies and examples of applications of AI that we mean when exploring this subject and how they might relate to the dynamics of WPS. So in this table, we've categorized 3 types of uses of AI. The first is peace building. So when an AI technology is built specifically for the purposes of responding to conflict or reducing the likelihood of future conflict. So in this case, we are talking, for example, of predictive analytics tools for migration management, conflict early warning tools, also tools that are developed to track evidence of human trafficking, and chatbots that might also be used to facilitate peace building. Next, we look at technologies that are neutral. And these are actually the technologies that we talk the most about. So the AI technology originally was built neither for peace nor for conflict, but nevertheless can impact them. Here we can think about social media, news and search recommendation systems, misinformation content, and particularly recently, what we call generative AI, types of AI algorithms that create text, images, and video based on some basic prompts. And finally, we have the category of conflict. In this case, the objective of the AI technology is to engage in physical or virtual conflict on purpose. So particularly here, we talk about autonomous weapons systems, disinformation content, so content developed intentionally to disinform, and surveillance without the knowledge or consent, as in the case of human rights activists. What's interesting is that either one of these technologies can have some adverse effects on WPS, even in the peace building category. So it's always important to take into consideration a gender impact assessments when deploying AI technologies overall. Of course, for the conflict-related technologies, we can expect there to always be a negative effect on the WPS. So we're more interested in also exploring the effects, positive and negative, of peace building and neutral technologies, and particularly in the case of peace building AI, to be able to mitigate these negative effects to really benefit from the positive effects. So I'll share here a table that shows some of the preliminary results of the research, categorizing the risks and opportunities of AI for peace in Southeast Asia. So we've talked about the neutral uses of AI. In this case, we are really talking about misinformation and hate content. And there is significant, as has been discussed, adverse effects of the dissemination of misinformation and hate content through social media recommendation systems. From a technical perspective, the recommendation systems are the algorithms in the social media that promote polarizing content and have had a devastating effects on women by promoting, as was spoken about by other panelists, by promoting hate speech towards women. We can also see that in cases of biometric identification being used, which is another type of AI, there has been concerns about adverse effects, particularly when these technologies have different outputs for women and for women of color in particular. So research has shown that biometric identification systems that are used throughout the region still have different outputs and can lead to negative security effects for women in the region. I won't go necessarily through all of them. One of them that I found was interesting that came up a lot in the region is this idea of techno-solutionism. So the fact that in the excitement of AI, tools and solutions are being deployed without proper testing, particularly in cases and situations where there might be already marginalized or vulnerable group. This happens in particular in the use of AI technologies in the case of migration, where there's energy and good intentions in relation to that. However, the testing and the risk assessments are not conducted properly, and there can be risks. For example, when a female migrant is misidentified through biometric identifications, we have seen cases where refugee claims can be rejected, people can be sent home, cases can be lengthened for a long time. So these kinds of effects that would have dramatic effects on women's lives. So on the other hand, we see that there are a lot of possible favorable effects. So again, looking at the negative effects, identifying solutions that could still be deployed, but with a mitigation, a reversal of the risks, and deployment through of positive tools. So a use of AI, which is done quite widely, is trying to track evidence of human trafficking, of the trafficking of women, by identifying trends and patterns in data, which AI is very capable of doing. And so overall, if this is done with appropriate checks and balances, this has been shown to actually have a really positive effect. We also have done some studies on social media where we see the opposite effect. So we see that social media can be used by women's rights organizations and local peace-building organizations for very positive effects, improving digital literacy, empowerment, and autonomy of women, conducting communications and advocacy on the WPS. And in particularly, we can talk about women who are very isolated. We still have child brides in the region. We still have women that are confined to their homes in the region. And we can see the other effect where social media platforms or digital tools can reach them, where other means, where they might not be well supported, where they might not easily be able to access a community to support them. Similarly, we see very positive examples of mobile apps and chatbots developed in the regions to support women and WPS agendas. And notably, when these tools are developed by women, we see an even more favorable effect. And this also promotes, it reinforces the idea of increasing the representation of women in AI in the region, which can lead to the development of more appropriate AI technologies that would support WPS. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time, and I look forward to discussing.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, on time. Thank you very much. I want to turn to Zahra. And Zahra, my question for you is, now we have heard from the other presentations that while emerging technologies carry a vast potential to leverage peace efforts across Asia and the Pacific, there are also obstacles for civil society and peace builders to exercise their civic engagement. Based on your experiences, could you elaborate on a few key challenges to women's safe online civic engagement, and what can be done to defend women's digital rights? Over to you, Zahra.
All right, thank you. So I was speaking on challenges to women's safe online civic engagement, especially women human rights defender. So this is based on one of our research that women human rights defender being targeted in online sphere. A majority of women are actively participating in online activism as well as women human rights defender, and they increasingly aware of important issues in the hope that national discourse could be spread to wider audience independently without restrictions. When we are speaking up about women human rights defender, they can be of volunteers, individuals who assist victims of violence, community organizer, activists, human rights worker, humanitarian workers, or other identities to explain their involvement in human rights defense activism. And they work actively both professionally and voluntarily to ensure and protect human rights, and both are also working at the national level and at the grassroots with the community, including organizational work as an institutional administration team. So I think we can agree that their work was part of the movement for the promotion and protections of human rights with gender identity as women. But as I mentioned before, that they still receive many offline and online threats, and this threat can undoubtedly limit their freedom of expression due to a loss of confidence in the safety of using digital technology, and removing oneself from the internet has further implications beyond self-censorship, such as cutting off access to information, electronic services, and social or professional communications. So portraying the experience of women human rights defender facing challenges in its work must be understood as more than just individual events, but to see the extent to which systemic and structural oppression occurs due to differences in gender identity and or because of the work they do and on gender-related issues. So I think it is important to us to recognize that digital technology sometimes becomes a space to perpetuates violence, and social media and digital platforms are being used to spread violence, misogynist and sexist narratives that threaten peace, social cohesion, and gender equality. And last, there are gender inequalities and access to connectivity, digital education skills, and access to existing technologies, that meaning individual women are increasingly at a disadvantage in terms to access to information, digital services. And as I mentioned before, too, that COVID-19 outbreak placed women and children at greater risk of exploitations and sexual violence, both online and offline. Next slide, please. So what action that we can do, because we cannot abandon the use of social media platforms to campaign for human rights issues in the current digital era. And some groups of women, including human rights defender, women in politics, journalists, bloggers, and any intersectionality that women have are particularly targeted by the public. So I think first we have to solidarity, developing radical empathy, and also building collective care as we are seeing members' well-being. And we commit to addressing interlocking operations. And we know too well that we must prioritize our care as a part of our resistance. And second is raise awareness regarding the disproportionate barriers faced by women and girls in access to technology, such as societal fear of technology, bearing the responsibility of household chores and domestic and care work, and also social and cultural stigma around their empowerment. And then support, integrate, and promote the already existing of various services for victims so they can be empowered. And last but not least, government must commitment to ensure the at-risk group safe in the internet by making policy and laws that protect digital at-risk group. And I think there's some additional information that digital platform must ensure that their platform are safe and have a clear, gender responsive and sensitive mechanism to protect women's digital rights, since we are not feeling safe in the internet. And if a woman become a victim, one of the impact is self-censorship, and maybe they would not use the platform or even the internet because they know that it has threats and they fear become a victim for a second time. And it is essential to build internal spaces regarding understanding gender equality and other matters that break down patriarchal technological biases. And because technology is still binary, as in voice recognition, which only detects male or female voices. And I think the spread of public internet spaces is becoming more diverse by presenting issues following the principles of human rights and democracy. So I think that's I can share with you. Thank you, and I'll give back to Nuri.
Thank you very much, Zahra. I just want to point out that there are a couple of questions being posted, and I would like to invite any of the panelists or the presenters to just type your written answers to those questions as we move along. The last question is for Shelley. Shelley, we see that emerging technologies are developing at a rapid pace, and that this is making it difficult for women's and digital rights movements to keep up with new types of harm. Drawing from your extensive experience, what are some key steps to ensure that digital platforms and technologies are safe and encouraging for women's civic engagement, perhaps specifically when it comes to the work of women human rights defenders and activists in Southeast Asia or another region? Over to you,
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Now, building on the online misogyny study that I mentioned earlier, I want to draw our attention to the role of bystanders, which I find is frequently missing from the current discourse on how to tackle online misogyny. Now, a bystander is someone who witnesses an act of abuse, including violence against women, and has the choice whether or not to intervene. Now, the traditional concept of a bystander has been limited by geographic circumstance. For example, commuters at subway stations who alert security, the victim, or both about sexual voyeurism. However, as the sites of abuse have changed, with our lives being increasingly led online, our idea of bystanders has also evolved, and rightfully so. Now, you may be wondering, as we did, why bystanders are responding positively to misogynistic content online. You will remember I said earlier that 4.5 times more likely to be retweeted when compared to non-misogynistic comments. We have a few theories as to why misogynistic content seems to enjoy such popularity with bystanders on Twitter, and I think it might be worthwhile to reflect on these in this session. First, bystanders might believe that by liking and retweeting misogynistic content, what they're doing is not as bad as originating the content themselves. Yet the practical effect of liking and retweeting is reinforcement and amplification, which can be devastating to victim survivors. Second, these users may simply not recognize this content to be harmful or problematic in the first place. Research indicates that understanding of gender equality in its various forms is not particularly strong in a context like Singapore. For example, a 2019 Ipsos survey of 1,000 Singaporeans found that 45% believed that women who wear revealing clothes should not complain if men make comments about their appearances. Third, and this is another reason why bystanders might be hesitant to intervene in online misogyny situations, it's because of how difficult it can be to breach the social norms of masculine solidarity. This may be especially salient if the originator of the content is a peer or a user they admire. It's hard for friends to call one another out, a process that typically leads to a combination of embarrassment, frustration, and anger. Lastly, bystanders might not feel compelled to intervene in violence because of the way an online space such as Twitter compounds the diffusion of responsibility. By this principle, the more bystanders are present in a situation, the less personal responsibility falls upon each individual bystander to take action. In other words, everybody is expecting somebody else to step up. Now, how do we address these specific challenges? One intervention that's showing a lot of promise is bystander interventions. Bystander strategies engage others in prevention by increasing awareness and educating on how to intervene effectively and safely. Through bystander trainings, individuals learn skills necessary in order to recognize behaviors or social situations that could potentially be violent or that support norms of violence, as well as how to change social norms safely and help to reduce potential future violence. Now, an advantage of bystander programs is that they can provide a positive, inclusive, and empowering framework for prevention without making women as victims the gatekeepers, who by extension may be perceived to hold some responsibility for that violence. These bystander trainings use the 5Ds framework: direct, distract, delay, delegate, and document are the different methods that bystanders can use to support someone who is being harassed, emphasize that harassment is unacceptable, and demonstrate to people in their lives that they too have the power to make online spaces safer. Systematic review of bystander programs in the US, Canada, and in India observed that their most pronounced benefit was changing attitudes towards rape myths. In specific programs targeted at students' rejection of victim blaming myths was sustained both immediately after the program and for months afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley, and also to all the panelists. So those are really interesting observations with some key examples. I think we don't have a lot of time left, and so I want to turn very quickly to see if the audience has any questions. Let's see. So one of the questions, I think the Gael has answered but I'm just going to put it out there to see if any of the panelists would like to respond. Have you tried connecting or getting a group of women leaders in Southeast Asia together, providing a safe platform to discuss and strategize? Does any of the panelists want to share some experiences in that regard? And the second question is, what kind of online gender-based violence that frequently happen in the digital spaces? How far are you and your organization engaged with the social media platform, which is the key actor to addressing this problem, considering that the online gender-based violence usually happen in the social media? Does anyone want to respond to that question? Shelley, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I can take that question. Now, technology companies, social media companies are an important advocacy target for AWARE. And this has been particularly true in countries. If you were to look at the experience of other women's rights activists, other women's rights organizations, it has been true in contexts where governments have perhaps not stepped up with regulatory measures to protect women in online spaces. So we've had to rely on self-regulation. We've had to rely on tech companies coming up with community guidelines, putting in place mechanisms through which victim survivors can register complaints in the hopes that action can be taken. Our own work with tech companies has included helping advise some of these community guidelines specifically on emerging issues. And I think this is a particularly important area for women's rights organizations to pay attention to. I say this because tech companies are often the ones with the data, right? They have information on new emerging challenges. And through collaboration with tech companies, the hope is that perhaps some of this data can be shared with us, or at the very least, we can provide a sounding board for how tech companies should address these emerging issues.
No, thank you very much. Those are truly, pertinent observations. Eleanor, please go ahead.
Many thanks. So I wanted to agree with what Shelley just mentioned. I think that today we do rely on social media companies because we are in an unregulated space, and it's not necessary that social media companies would always be responsible for developing those guidelines and being in a way the gatekeepers to disinformation. In recent years, we've seen social media companies particularly being criticized for their role in peace and conflict in the region. We can think notably about the peace and conflict, the conflict in Myanmar, where there has been a lot of investigation and criticism of Facebook, notably for its lack of intervention in the dissemination of hate speech. Yes, it's important to engage with social media companies, but additionally, it's important to provide overarching regulations to make sure that social media companies are forced to act and to protect women's rights in this space.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. And could I invite Zahra to give her observations?
Okay, thank you. So I think I can give them some additional information, since there are questions that what kind of LGBT that frequently happen. We have an annual reports, and the finding is non-consensual intimate images distribution. And because I have shared about women human rights defender attack, I think the types of LGBT that targeting women human rights defender, including privacy, violence, surveillance, and monitoring, and then harassment and threats to violence, direct threats, and also attack targeted at certain communities. And our organization engages with the social media platform through consolidation and networking, and we're also trying to connecting with them, so we can make a progressive movement and help to make a safe space for everyone. I think that is only can I share with all of you. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much to all panelists. for responding to some of these questions. There's some interesting comments as well that are being posted online. I would encourage participants to also post comments and just share your experiences. If you have examples of projects that you know that could provide solutions to some of these challenges, just please use the Q&A function. Another, I think we have time for just one more questions. Does anybody want to answer as to what kind of training is there for AI experts and coders about gender issues? Gael, do you want to respond to this? Or Eleanor, you see your hand still up, and would you like to respond?
I can start, and I'm sure Eleanor will also have elements to contribute. But so I think on the biases, the gender biases in artificial intelligence, we are trying to raise awareness on these issues through a number of events, conferences, and also, for instance, boot camps with young professionals who are working in technology, in AI, in coding. So we are trying, but I would be really interested in, from the participants to know if there is maybe some, a direction we can take to have access to more people, because I feel like our approach is targeted to some specific individuals or companies, etc. But maybe there is a way to target more people. So feel free to share in your Q&As also your recommendations. That would be appreciated.
Thank you very much, Gael. Eleanor, please.
Thank you so much. I wanted to provide a little bit of perspective very quickly to this, this question. So in our research, we see that AI developers have very low awareness of gender rights and gender effects of their technologies. Overall, computer scientists and AI developers in general are not empowered to understand the societal effects of their technologies. They are trained to gather requirements based on what is asked of them in terms of what the technology should perform. If they're not asked to ensure that there is no discrimination and bias in the training data sets, in the testing and monitoring of their tools, it's very unlikely or much less likely that they will take the initiative themselves. However, we can see that when we speak to developers, we're presenting them with a new set of requirements, ensuring lower discrimination and lower bias of their tools. They're more than happy to include these elements because they interpret that as an error of the tool. If the tool has a discriminatory or an adverse effect for women than it does for men, in fact, in a lot of cases, it's an error, and so that can be addressed in this way. One really interesting example is when we see faculties, computer science faculties, pairing up with a gender studies faculty, and we've seen that here in Thailand at AIT, where inside of the university they also have a gender studies function that pairs up with the AI function to discuss some of these issues together. So I just wanted to present kind of the bigger picture as to why there's so much disempowerment from the development perspective in terms of really understanding these issues.
Thank you very much, Eleanor and colleagues, for sharing your responses and observations. So we have come to the conclusion of this event. Unfortunately, there is so much that we just need a lot more time to discuss some of these issues. Some of them obviously are quite innovative and new. I would really like to thank the panelists for their time and for sharing the experiences. I would also like to thank my colleagues, Alex and Gael, and the Government of Australia and Republic of Korea for co-organizing this event with us. I would like to finally invite Ms. Lee Ki-soon, who is the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family in the Republic of Korea, to provide closing remarks via a pre-recorded video. Thank you once again to all the participants who have taken the time to be with us tonight.
Distinguished guests, greetings from Seoul. I am Lee Ki-soon, Vice Minister of Gender Equality and Family of the Republic of Korea. It is my great pleasure to deliver the closing remarks for this event on the sideline of the 67th CSW. I would like to express my gratitude to the officials at UN Women for all the hard work they've done organizing this. My gratitude also goes to First Assistant Secretary Sierra Spencer at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia, as well as other government officials, speakers, and of the participants. As experts have stated in their presentations, digital transformation has a positive impact on women, like with employment opportunity, but it also poses a risk, such as an increase in cyber sex crimes. This proves the importance of international solidarity for gender equality from the perspectives of women and children, as well as women, peace and security. Since the launch of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration in May 2022, the Korean government has been paying special attention to the WPS agenda and joining force with the international community under the administration's stated priority of creating a safe society free from crime and establishing a system to protect and support victims. To prevent increasing digital sex crimes and protect children and youth, particularly teenage girls, the statutory sentences have been increased, and legal grounds have been established to punish not only the production, but also the possession, purchase, storage, or viewing of digital materials containing sexual abuse. In addition, to reinforce responsibility for preventing the circulation of digital sexual abuse materials, Internet service providers are now mandated to take technical and managerial measures to guarantee digital sex crime victims the right to have their illegally posted images erased from public memories. The Digital Sex Crime Victims Support Center offers round-the-clock one-stop services for counseling, assistance with investigation, and the deleting of the illegally filmed materials, including tracking and the deleting the secondary and tertiary circulation thereof. On the local level, specialized regional counseling centers for digital sex crimes are being set up with professional counselors, rendering support for the entire recovery process, so victims of digital sex crimes can receive more robust assistance with their own communities. On the positive side of digital transformation, the Korean government focus is on increasing the number of women participating in new industry and providing support for women to advance into the jobs of tomorrow. For women who experience career interruptions, the government is scaling up vocational training in emerging technology and high value added areas such as IT, artificial intelligence, and big data. To close the gender imbalance in the digital sector, gender impact assessment have been carried out on major vocational programs, and the government has suggested improvement in the way training programs are designed and personnel are secured. Moreover, in an effort to realize gender equality in the digital age, the Korean Foundation for Women in Science, Engineering, and Technology is providing research subsidies to companies and institutes that employ female scientists and researchers who have experienced career interruptions. Lastly, the Korean government is stepping up its effort, both within the country and in solidarity with the global community. In August 2022, the UN Women's Center for Excellence for Gender Equality was launched in Seoul, the first of its kind in Asia. Since then, the center has been working to conduct research, provide training and education, and build partnership in its effort to spread the WPS agenda throughout the Asia-Pacific region, to incorporate a gender lens into digital technology and advancement, and to support civil society and other organizations that are dedicated to strengthening digital security for women. We are jointly supporting the WPS Cybersecurity project in the Asia Pacific with the Australian government in partnership with UN Women. In December 2021, the Republic of Korea and Australia adopted and announced the joint statement on image-based abuse and digital sex crime. This is one example of working together to eradicate online-based gender violence. Going further, the government of the Republic of Korea will continually work to realize true gender equality in the digital era in Korea, the Asia Pacific and beyond. I would like to take this opportunity to ask you to join our effort. I wish all of you great health and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Republic of Korea for their partnership with UN Women on this issue. I want to thank again to everyone for participating in this event. And I want to wish you good night from Bangkok. Bye-bye.